everybody, I'm back. I had a nice 2 weeks off. Hope you all had a nice life while I wasn't here, and don't worry, I haven't moved house again. This is just a new location of the house. I just needed a change of scenery. Anyway, to kick off the next series of videos that I'll be doing, let's talk about the new Uncharted. Wait, the new Uncharted what?
Yeah, I honestly never thought after Uncharted 4 that Naughty Dog would bother going back into the series, especially with The Last of Us 2 on the way, but, well, here we are with the technically DLC expansion to Uncharted 4, The Lost Legacy. And luckily they didn't milk another Nathan Drake story. He's had his time now and he had a fantastic closure to his adventures in 4. So now we can focus on two other characters that really needed focusing on. Chloe Fraser from Uncharted 2 and 3, who never appeared in 4, and Nadine Ross, who was in 4 but I felt wasn't given enough screen time to really stand out as anyone other than a mercenary. Before we begin though, I'm gonna get better at this, so I'm gonna say it right now. Spoilers, alright? Okay, nice. The story this time sees what happened to Chloe and Nadine after the events of Uncharted 4, with Chloe needing a little job in India to do with some treasure to grab on the side, and Nadine being the hired gun that Chloe needs in any tense situation since the part of India we are in is a highly volatile war zone. And after a really short, relaxed introduction with one of the genuinely sweetest kid characters I've ever seen in a video game, we're off. That's the setup, and the rest of the story unfolds around that. It's remarkably basic, but works well here. And I love how the gameplay and tutorial segments start the story off in the most oppressive high-stakes atmosphere I've felt in any Uncharted game. It made me feel a little uncomfortable and jumpy and got me invested immediately without the need of an adrenaline-fueled boat chase or a train hanging off the edge of a cliff. Once that's over, the same classic Indiana Jones-style adventure-y feel also kicks off into gear, but with the oppression still sneaking in on occasion in the form of Asav, the villain of the piece, wanting the same treasure you want for unknown purposes until the end of the game. And as a villain, he's awesome. He's someone that loves being himself and being an evil bastard and revels in violence while also trying to come across as civilized, fair and intelligent, but he can never get the right image or balance, so he comes across as very unpredictable in each scene that he's in, leading to not only entertaining back and forth between our heroines and him, but also entertaining fistfights with him. The way this guy holds his restricted and controlled stance when he so desperately wants to tear your head off is a brilliant touch. So yeah, very simple premise, good villain, but that's all you can really say about the plot. Instead, the game gets its money's worth for the narrative and an interesting differing dynamic for Uncharted between characters that rarely agree and don't necessarily even like each other for most of the game. Chloe needs help and Nadine needs money, and that's their relationship, which obviously leaves it extremely rocky. Sarcastic quips and dialogue is perfectly written for each character, with Chloe being exactly how I remember her in 2 and 3, and the moments where the characters interrupt the gameplay mechanics, such as beginning a lockpick section only to have Nadine get impatient and smash the window to unlock the door from the inside, is a perfect Naughty Dog detail. And since the lockpicking only takes a few seconds anyway, it wouldn't have been a problem even if I had to do it. It was just a nice character moment. Another great moment like this is Chloe forcing herself to be the driver for most of the game, but then Nadine finishing off a car wench pulling puzzle before you even reach the car to do it yourself, with a sarcastic jab from her. And another is when you're in the middle of planning an assault on 2 guards and then she goes ahead and does it during the gameplay as Chloe is talking behind cover. Moments like this aren't just deliriously entertaining, but it never comes across as unwelcome since they're so rare as moments in the game and they're very spaced out. And stuff like that makes me connect with the characters more anyway, and when they feel like they behave out of the gameplay logic, it's like they have a soul. Nadine even drives the car towards wench segments for you so you don't waste time going back and forth, and if a puzzle requires exploring an area to hit multiple buttons or something, Nadine will find some for you off camera to save you time. She lets you know if you missed an enemy and highlights them through walls for you. She actually fights, kills and cover fires for you, and when all these things are coupled with the extremely natural and understandable relationship building and past divulging for each of the ladies, it's very effective for the narrative experience, which then makes the sort of twist about Sam Drake being captured by Asav and him needing to send Asav on a goose chase to buy Chloe time in order to come and save his life extra shitty that Chloe never mentioned it when you consider how much Nadine hates the Drake brothers. It's an actual logical conflict of characters that were just starting to like each other, and I didn't know where the story would go because of all of these things. And of course, when the writing wants to be funny, it's really fucking funny and full of that classic Uncharted witty charm from start to end.
It's great when you're given such a simple story, but it's the characters within that story that are interesting, engaging and entertaining enough to keep it strong until the end. And despite the issues I have with this story that I'll talk about as we go on, it's still good stuff. The same goes for the gameplay as well, which for the most part is basically Uncharted 4 again, but with a couple of tweaks and improvements that are very much welcomed, I think.
The bulk of the gameplay, the running around, exploring, chases, shootouts, escapes, vehicle segments, grappling hook swinging and climbing around as a whole is basically at its best, much like how it is in 4. However, there are a couple of tweaks that stood out to me. The sudden near-death moments that Uncharted is famous for require more reactions and thought from you to get out of them instead of of just them all being scripted events, and there isn't as much obvious direct funneling on climbing sections. I mean, no obviously highlighted or unrealistic parts of a cliff or anything like that. I mean, they are there and you can see where you're supposed to go, but they feel more like a part of the scenery instead of superimposed onto the scenery, and it makes chases really stressful and less mindless when you actually have to look around and read the environment on where to go next while running for your life. It's never as simple as just running away and following all of the yellow climbing paths like it is in some of the early games. To be fair, I did play this game on hard mode, so I don't know if that would affect anything, but that's what I experienced anyway. In most of the chases and such, there are multiple climbing or jumping paths and exploring paths for the open temples, leading to optional dialogue and even unique exchanges if you choose to ignore Nadine and take another route or not follow her lead. It's the little things that make Naughty Dog games so great, right? Lost Legacy also expands on the open level idea in Uncharted 4, and since the game as a whole is a fair bit shorter, it's not a full-on Uncharted release, it feels like more of your time is spent doing this against the few times you do it in 4. This leads to, in my opinion, the best level in any Uncharted game to date, Chapter 4 of the Lost Legacy. We have a huge open area, an unmarked map with no placement markers, optional content and treasures everywhere, a jeep for the utterly gorgeous terrain traversal, and wench puzzles to open old temple doors, a turning point for Nadine and Chloe's relationship as they realise they are stuck in each other's company for a long time and so just begin to open up to each other and crack jokes, and in my favourite part, an entire explorative side quest with 11 tokens hidden all over this massive place needed to open a special chest for a gameplay reward, and every token has a specific gunfight arena or puzzle to solve with no guidance other than a map marking. The gunfights all give you specifically different threats to deal with and a special kind of terrain to work around where stealth or brute force work in either places, and the puzzles, whether they're ones you have to stop and solve yourself or actually combine platforming with critical thinking, all provide unique challenges that I was really looking forward to discovering, along with actually finding the thing and getting the reward for doing the optional stuff in the first place. And the reward you get is really cool. You get a bracelet that not only vibrates the controller but visibly lights up whenever you're near the dozens of treasures scattered around the entire game, which after finding a lot give you the chance to purchase loads of post-game gameplay and presentation modifiers like infinite ammo, no gravity, helium voices and so much more. Filling in the map tower by tower, puzzle by puzzle is great, and this is easily some of the best adventuring gameplay Uncharted has ever done. Even the main quest you need to do, not involving the optional puzzles, has a huge temple in the center to direct you towards each segment you're looking for, but it never gives you directions or anything, just an inkling, just a direction. I loved it. The puzzling as a whole is pretty great, and even though I do think at least 2 of the dial twister puzzles could have been replaced with something else, everything else is actually a really great puzzle that requires actual thought on your end. They aren't the most difficult or anything like that, but they will catch you off guard if you don't think about what you're doing, and that's awesome. Lots of them remind me of the quality of the Uncharted 3 puzzles, and there are some very memorable ones like the axe-wielding statues that cycle through a swinging animation after you jump on their platform switches enough times. So you need to get across the platforms and hit the correct symbol switches in a safe order for you to get across without getting hit in their swinging part of the button cycle. And the shadow puzzle was another great one that took me a while to do, figuring out how to get the different shadowed images on both walls, but also trying to figure out how to get the tiles in the right place with the sliding tiles not stopping in the exact places you need them to stop, meaning you need to move the old tiles that you had got in the right place to begin with in order to stop one of them sliding if you need to get it into the middle of the grid. And even if a puzzle isn't too difficult, they're all visually interesting and impressive enough where it still feels like a classic action adventure movie going all out with creativity. The gunfight arenas are more complex and bigger than ever, and because of the smaller size of the game, there's a much higher ratio of different arenas with different obstacles and means to shoot, climb, swing, and hide around when compared to some of the more story-driven elements from the last games. For the first time in Uncharted history, I also found melee really useful to save ammo and deal with the AI ganging you from all corners, and you need to move more and switch up guns constantly in order to stop enemies from getting the drop on you.
Stealth is also way more rewarding in this game, and let me just say, I've played all of the Uncharted games on hard difficulty, and I did that the same with this game as well, and I had the most trouble with this game over any of the previous ones because of the way that the game is built. It's a good old challenge, so stealth became my best friend more than ever for more reasons than just evening the odds against me silently before I triggered the inevitable alert phase.
Like previous games, you do get the occasional very powerful weapon for a successful stealth kill, but that isn't too often. Instead, you find yourself finding the best overpowered weapons hidden inside crates behind careful lockpicking sections that are impossible to access and perform while being shot at. Plus, these Enemies also add an extra layer of tension and stress while you're undetected, and the game punishes you for rushing and panicking in these sections. This was really welcome for me, and it spiced the gameplay up a treat. The intro even does this when you try to get through a door and the guard lights go on. It's like a chase sequence but with you needing to be delicate, and it's a nice change of pace that always makes you feel like someone is breathing down your neck. The same applies for the underwater part later on when you're saving both Nadine and Sam from drowning. It's really stressful shit. And I'm sure you could see for yourself during this entire video, but this game looks phenomenal, and I spent way more time in the beautiful yet hilarious photo mode than I care to admit. I never do that in any game, but here I just couldn't help myself. That and the spectacle is heightened magnificently by the level of detail and vivid life bursting through every frame of the game, and since that is mainly what Uncharted goes for, it nails it 110% and more. I still can't get over how good the game looks and how good the facial animations are as well.
But aside from a few too many dial puzzles, I mean, they're still great as they are, I just think there could have been a bit more variety. The story, the thing that I was talking about and alluding to earlier, that's what I have a little bit more of a problem with. Not that there's anything majorly wrong with it, don't get me wrong, it's a good story with really, really good characters, but it definitely feels very expansion-y, if that makes any sense.
If you compare it to most action-adventure games, it does have a strong story in itself, but it doesn't really have a strong start, middle, or ending with separate moods or anything within that story. It feels very much just kind of plonked, if you know what I mean. The characters in the story keep it going strong, but as far as an entertaining, dashing, exciting, cheesy action-adventure plot is concerned, it doesn't really pop or spend enough time doing anything with itself because of the fact it's unfortunately an expansion game. The game length doesn't permit the time for setting individual scenarios, acting them out, and then concluding it all within a bigger story. Instead, you're in a single scenario, in a single location as soon as you start, and it stays mostly the same aside from the visuals and obligatory climactic ending. I mean, the twist of Sam Drake being one of the reasons they are there that causes Nadine and Chloe to fall out literally lasts a few minutes before they're absolutely fine again. There's just no time to really simmer on the scenes or moments, and it definitely feels side story-ish. Also, despite the awesome villain, when you strip it back, he's basically exactly the same as Lazarevich in Uncharted 2, a crazy warmonger that destroys rather than preserves to get what he wants, and he's a ruthless, unforgiving killer commanding an army.
Still, don't take what I say as game-breaking or too massive of a problem, because it's noticeable, it sticks out, but overall it's not that massive of a problem. You can't be too harsh with this game. You've got to keep in mind it is an expansion. I got 7 or 8 hours of the story alone, not without the replay that I'm going to be doing in a couple of days, and not without any of the online, not that I'm going to do that, but you know, there's a lot of bang for your buck here. 25 quid, and it's pretty much a separate game. After The Last of Us Left Behind, which was a 2-hour game that was only a tenner cheaper than this game when it came out, I was expecting a shorter, more upmarket DLC kind of thing like Left Behind was, but the fact that I got more gameplay out of this story, and I played like half the price for some of the other games on PS4 I've had in the past, and that have ended in like 4 to 5 hours on the story mode alone, what? It surprised me with its content and value, and it also surprised me with the level of brilliance it reaches despite being a side story. I just don't think, when you take everything into account, that it's the best Uncharted game. And I feel like if it was actually a full-on Uncharted 5 with more length and more depth and more chance for a more epic story, this would have been the best one. As it is, it's not, but it's still fucking great, and I highly recommend you check it out. I give Uncharted The Lost Legacy a 9 out of 10. If it's your birthday today while watching this video, happy freaking birthday to you, and please remember to stay beautiful.